All right, so are you ready to decode some seriously cool linguistic secrets?
I am.
Because today we're diving deep into the world of Google Translate data.
Oh, wow.
Not just like your everyday how do you say hello in French, but the stuff that really reveals what people are thinking. We're talking millions of translations analyzed to figure out what words people are most curious about in English.
Fascinating.
It is. I mean,
Yeah.
think about it.
Okay.
Every time someone hits that translate button, they're revealing a little piece of themselves.
Hmm.
Their desires, anxieties, maybe even some national psyche,
Yeah.
all wrapped up in the words they feel the need to understand in English.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We're not just looking at dictionary definitions here. We're looking
Yeah.
at like the underlying motivations, what drives people to seek out certain words.
It's like a global mood ring. But instead of colors, we've got words.
Mhm.
So the study focused on single word translations, nouns and adjectives, the building blocks of meaning. And drumroll please, the most popular word to translate across the globe, beautiful.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
Hmm. That's interesting. Makes you wonder, doesn't it?
it does.
Is it just the aesthetics,
Yeah.
the beauty of it, or is it something deeper, the desire to express admiration?
Yeah.
Maybe it's even tapping into a shared human experience.
And it's not just beautiful, good, and love are right up there too.
Right. So there's this kind of like this universal yearning for positivity.
Totally. But hold on tight because things are about to get really interesting.
Okay.
When we start looking at specific languages, that's where the real cultural puzzles emerge.
Each language has its own unique fingerprint,
Yeah.
its own pattern of curiosity. And those patterns can tell us a lot about cultural values, preoccupations, maybe even anxieties.
So, for example, the most commonly translated Russian word is mama.
Mama. Interesting.
On the surface, it seems sweet, right? Sentimental even. But what does it say about the role of family in Russian society? The significance of motherhood? It's a jumping off point for a much larger conversation.
I see what you mean. If you're a teacher, for instance, and you're trying to introduce your students to Russian culture, this little nugget about mama could really spark some fascinating discussions.
Exactly.
Hmm.
It's a window into cultural values
Mhm.
that you might not get from a textbook.
Absolutely.
And it's not just about the heartwarming stuff either. The Dutch seem particularly fixated on translating the word colleague.
Colleague.
Almost like they're double-checking they've got the right level of formality in their workplace interactions.
That's fascinating because the Dutch word collega is very similar to the English word colleague.
Right.
So is it a linguistic quirk, or does it point to a deeper concern with precision in professional settings, maybe even a subtle reflection of Dutch work culture, which is often perceived as very direct and to the point?
And then you have the French, who are constantly looking up the English equivalent of monsieur, gentlemanly conduct.
Clearly matters.
Clearly matters. And it's not just single words either. When we zoom out and look at the bigger picture, we start to see patterns emerge across languages,
Uh-huh.
like Spanish, Portuguese, and Italian. They share a whole bunch of words in their top 10 translations. Not surprising, considering their shared linguistic roots.
Right. This highlights the concept of cognates, which are words that share a common ancestor. And they often reflect these historical connections and cultural exchanges between languages. We see that with the Romance languages. They all stem from Latin.
Exactly. But then you've got languages like Japanese, which stand out as truly unique. None of their top 10 translated words overlap with any other language in this study.
It's really powerful. It illustrates how language isn't just this tool for communication, but it's really a reflection of a culture's worldview. Japanese, with its complex writing system and intricate grammar, offers a totally different lens for understanding reality. And for those visual learners out there, the researchers actually created an interactive visualization that maps all these connections between translated words.
So it's like a global word map,
Yeah.
where you can trace the linguistic lineage of different cultures.
You can see how they're interconnected, how they've influenced each other.
It's pretty amazing.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful representation of how human language, despite its incredible diversity, is ultimately a tapestry woven from our shared experiences, our desires, our anxieties.
So what we're seeing here, it's more than just a list of popular words.
Yeah.
It's a glimpse into the heart of different cultures,
Mm.
a way to understand their priorities, their values, and maybe even see ourselves reflected back in unexpected ways. But we've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to uncover in these linguistic depths.
And that's what we'll be exploring in the rest of this deep dive.
Yes.
We're going to delve into the limitations of this data, the ethical considerations of such analysis, and what it all means for understanding our increasingly interconnected world.
Mhm.
So, get ready, because we're just getting started.
I'm ready.
Okay. Welcome back to our deep dive into Google Translate data. Before the break, we were really digging into how those simple translations, they can really tell us a lot about different cultures and perspectives, right?
Yeah, like how in Russian mama is the most translated word. It kind of makes you think about the importance of family there, right?
Exactly. And with the Dutch always translating colleague, it's like, are they super focused on being proper at work?
It does make you wonder, though, how much we can read into this data. What are the limits?
Right. It's super important to remember we're only seeing a tiny piece of the puzzle.
We can't just make huge assumptions about entire cultures based on just these top 10 lists.
No, definitely not. It's like judging a book by its cover.
Yeah. Like we saw, beautiful is translated a lot globally. But that doesn't mean every culture sees beauty the same way.
Exactly. Think about art or fashion or music. What's beautiful in one culture can be totally different in another.
It all comes down to context, really.
Yeah, context is key. Even a word like beautiful, it can have totally different meanings depending on the culture.
And that's where things get super fascinating for anyone who wants to really get into languages and culture.
If you love languages, this data is like a starting point for a whole journey.
For sure. You can explore how words change meaning over time.
Exactly, like etymology.
And for academics, it could spark whole new research projects. Like, how do cultural values shape the way people use language?
Yeah, totally. And for teachers, it's a gold mine for lesson ideas.
Oh, absolutely. Can you imagine having students compare these top 10 lists?
Oh, yeah, they could see how different cultures are similar and different. It would make language come alive.
Totally. It would show them that language isn't just grammar rules. It's about understanding other people's worldviews.
Right. And speaking of different perspectives, this data also makes you think about English's global influence.
It does, because all these words are being translated into English.
It makes you wonder about its role as a lingua franca, the language people use to talk to each other when they don't speak the same native language.
Is English helping people connect across cultures? Or is it causing problems?
It's complicated. There's no easy answer.
But this data gives us something to think about.
Definitely. Like, how can we use language to bridge cultures, not divide them?
And that brings us back to that interactive visualization we mentioned.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just a cool visual. It's a real tool for understanding these connections.
You can see how certain words clump together. It shows you how languages and cultures influence each other.
It's like a family tree of languages, right?
You can see how they're related.
And how they've changed over time.
Exactly. Like, you can see that the Romance languages all came from Latin. It's amazing how these languages seem separate, but they're really part of this bigger system.
And it's not just about history. It shows you how language is always changing.
Yeah. Like how words jump between languages. It shows how cultures are mixing all the time.
Words are borrowed and change.
It's proof that language is never static. It's always evolving, like a living, breathing thing.
So true. And as the world becomes more interconnected, understanding language and culture is more important than ever.
Definitely. It's not just about being able to talk to each other. It's about understanding each other.
It's about building empathy
Working together.
and appreciating all the different ways people express themselves.
Exactly. So as we go to the last part of our deep dive, think about this. What other linguistic mysteries are waiting to be discovered?
What can we learn by looking more closely at the words we use every day? We've been on quite a journey exploring the world of Google Translate data.
We have. From those universal words like beautiful to the more culturally specific ones like mama in Russian.
And we've talked about how this data can be useful for academics, teachers, and language lovers.
But how does it apply to everyday life? How can our listeners use this information?
That's the big question, right?
Imagine you're planning a trip abroad.
Okay.
Instead of just learning basic phrases, what if you looked up the words people in that country translate most into English?
That's interesting.
You might learn about their values, concerns, maybe even their sense of humor.
It could help you connect with the culture on a deeper level.
Exactly. And think about learning a new language.
Yeah.
It's not just memorizing words, it's about understanding a whole new way of thinking.
It's like each language gives you a different lens to see the world.
Right. When you learn a new language, you're expanding your understanding of the human experience.
And who knows, maybe you'll even learn something new about yourself along the way.
It's possible. You might find a new appreciation for your own language or develop a deeper understanding of people who speak other languages.
It's amazing how much we can learn from something as simple as a translation.
This deep dive has shown us that language is more than just communication.
It's a reflection of our shared humanity and the incredible diversity of cultures around the world.
Absolutely. So, as we wrap up, we want to leave you with this question. If you could translate just one word from another language, what would it be?
What are you curious about?
What mysteries do you want to unlock?
Because ultimately, this deep dive has been about you, the listener.
Your curiosity, your experiences, your unique place in the world.
Keep exploring, stay curious, and remember, the world is full of fascinating linguistic discoveries waiting to be made. Thanks for joining us.